After nearly 7 years of being my best friend and the person I trust most, I moved in with Ryan. This wasn't the issue. Living together was fine, save some of his more frustrating idiosyncrasies. Things like trying to get me to clean the dishes when I never use them, or saying, "Hey, can you clean up the dog puke?" when it's his dog and I'm in the other room. Stupid shit like that showed selfishness and laziness. When I first moved in with him, it was because my lease had run out around that time, and his ex-girlfriend had just broken up with him, so she was moving out and leaving him to deal with the rest of the lease. It seemed like a fine opportunity, and his place was within 3 miles of my work, rather than on the opposite side of town. At the end of the first month, he came to me and said, "Hey, I don't really have the money to pay bills this month." He worked as a waiter at Olive Garden. I worked as an insurance adjuster at the time. I had plenty of money, so that wasn't the issue. I was more worried for him. At the time, it seemed like he was in a bad financial spot after a breakup, so I said, "Ryan, it's cool, I got you this month. Don't worry about it." $800 I spent. I wrote separate checks and documented all of them. The checks for internet and gas I wrote out to Ryan since he told me they came out of his account from direct deposit. Remember, I trusted him 100% at this time since he had been there for me when I had been raped and when I had people break up with me. He'd been there for me through some serious shit, so I felt comfortable writing checks directly to him at the time. End of the next month, Ryan comes up to me and says, "Hey, I don't have money this month." Okay, now I'm perturbed. What do you mean you don't have the money? You work 40 hours a week, come home every night, and talk about making so much in tips, and I just gave you a 100% bill-free month. What happened? Apparently, he just couldn't afford it. $800 more spent, this time with a stipulation, that he write out a budget telling me where every dollar has been spent. Mind you, he is 2 years older than me, and I am 26 at the time. He doesn't make enough money to afford to not have a budget. For the next 2 weeks, I ask him nearly daily, "Make that budget yet, dude?" Every time I'd get a no, or a "I didn't really feel like it," or a "I'm not comfortable doing that." Okay, fine, I'm pissed, but whatever, as long as he has it done by week 3, I don't care. Week 3 of the 3rd month comes around. The internet shuts off. I call Suddenlink and ask why. They say, "You haven't paid your bill in 2 months. I thank the customer service lady and confront Ryan. Remember that I wrote checks to him for that? Apparently, they didn't come out of direct deposit, but they were cashed. "Ryan, where did my money go?" "I used it to pay bills." "No, the internet bill was not paid, but my money did leave my account." "Where did my money go, Ryan?" "I paid bills with it." "No, the other $14.60 I supplied paid the bills. Where is the remaining $140 that did not go to internet bills go?" "I guess I spent it." "So you stole it?" "No, I didn't." "Ryan, I have documented proof that you took my money outside of the agreed-upon use. You stole it. Now give it back immediately. Also, I had to pay $70 to turn the internet back on tonight, so you now owe me $210. I gave this man $1,600, $800 of it without any strings whatsoever, $800 with the stipulation that he explained to me in a detailed manner where his money is going. And this is how I am treated in return. Over the next 3 months, we lived together. He met most of his rent, but we had to take in 2 new roommates. While I made plenty, double rent and bills on me was a major drain. I told him the only way I could ever trust him again was for him to make that detailed budget and share it with me every payday, and also for him to pay me back my $210 total. I wasn't even asking for the full $1,740. In all this time, he only paid back $20 of it the night it happened. When we argued later, I asked why he never paid even $1 a week, since that would show he at least gave a shit. His response, "You mean I can finance it with you?" During this time, he tried to spread a lie about how he slept with our cool roommate's girlfriend. He also tried to make me feel like shit because I wasn't into a girl he was basically trying to throw at me. She didn't seem to be too into it either, so I really don't know why he was so adamant about pairing us up. She's cool. We just weren't for each other at all. Basically, he took every opportunity to make me feel worse or to lie to me while still trying to make it appear that he was helping me. His web of lies started untangling when I finally squeezed it out of him, what caused him not to be able to pay bills. He was $30,000 in credit card debt from stupid shit he bought 3 years ago, added up with his car payments on a car that was far too nice for him to own. I always suspected, but I implicitly trusted him for so long I didn't do anything about it. When I confronted him about all of this, he threatened suicide. In a not-so-stellar act on my part, I told him, "Fucking do it then." In my shaky and really not valid defense, it had all of the signs of a guilt trip and being entirely untrue, and it turned out I was right. I've been in that position before. I know what it's like to be there. He was using this to manipulate me, so I called him on it. Immediately after the end of that conversation, I messaged our roommates and called his girlfriend to inform them all of what was said and what happened. I told them, I'm not in a position to watch over him, and what he said has all of the signs of being a lie, but just in case, please keep an eye on him. The next day, he came into my room unannounced, absolutely infuriated that I would ever tell anyone what he told me. So you were using it as a guilt trip, huh? Otherwise, you'd understand I was trying to help you, just like what happened to me when I went through suicidal thoughts, or don't you remember because your head was so far up your own ass at that point in my life, too? He admitted it, and we had a 6-hour-long argument where I said some shit I can't take back, but he continued to lie to me and then get caught in his lies. After this came out, I packed my stuff up that day, squared stuff out with the cooler roommates so we would still be friends, canceled my part of the lease, and moved out. I haven't spoken to him since. I found a roommate on Craigslist because I was desperate to get out of my former living situation, and I had no one to stay with. I met this girl and we got along, so I moved in a couple of weeks later. She asked me when we met if I wanted any pets because she was getting a puppy and thought it would be nice if it had a friend, and I said I was thinking about getting a puppy as well. Anyway, things were fine for the first 4 months, except I noticed that she was very unstable, had constant panic attacks over her job, and drank heavily almost every day. At one point, she was hospitalized with severe stomach pain, and they said she had colitis and sent her home the next day, where she continued to drink while she was sick, probably making it worse. On Christmas Day, she was sick with the flu and got drunk then as well. She stayed in bed most of the day, and I spent the day with my boyfriend in my room. Anyway, we were laughing and giggling kind of loud because we were about to get frisky when she knocks on the door and demands that I tell her I'm okay because she thinks I'm being hurt or something. Then she barges in and decides to hang out with us while my boyfriend and I were laying in bed, and I was only wearing a tank top and underwear. It would have been obvious to anyone else what was going on, but she decides to intrude anyway and drinks a bunch of our alcohol until she passes out on my bed. So that was weird, but it gets better. The following February, I decided I wanted to get a kitten instead of a puppy, and she freaks the fuck out. She said cats are destructive, and she didn't think it would get along with her puppy, and she had the final say because my name wasn't on the lease, and that I would have to wait until she moved out, which could have been a year or more, and wasn't a definite thing. I was only subletting. It was rich coming from her because her puppy had already chewed up the wall in the spare bedroom, pooped on my clothes, and chewed up both of our belongings, including a Christmas present I had given her. I was livid because she said I could have a pet when I moved in, and our landlord allowed pets. Had she said I couldn't have the pet of my choosing in the beginning, I wouldn't have moved in. So we started arguing via text over the next couple of days, and she gets more and more ridiculous and belligerent. She was treating me like a child. I even agreed not to get a cat, but by that point, I didn't consider her a friend anymore because I felt like she lied to me. Instead of letting it go, though, she kept trying to meet up to discuss it, and I said I'd rather discuss it over text so there would be a record of what was said. Then she threatened to kick me out because I wasn't replying quickly enough, I guess. I was at work, and I refused to talk to her in person. Before I could even reply to that, she kicked me out for real and threatened to blackmail me by telling the landlord I smoked weed, which she was totally fine with, and I had text messages to prove it. She kept not giving me enough time to reply and just kept getting angrier and angrier because I wasn't doing what she told me to. All this happened while I was at work, and it was super busy because it was a Macy's and a week before Valentine's Day. Luckily, my boyfriend was a law student and told her she would have to refund my rent for the rest of the month if she wanted me to move out immediately. I stayed with him that night, and we went to go get my immediate necessities the next day. So we get there, and I go upstairs to start getting my stuff. I didn't speak to her. My boyfriend was standing in front of my door, so she couldn't get to me. She demands that he move or she'll call the police. He told her if she didn't call, he would. So she calls and tells the operator there's a man in her house who wouldn't leave and was threatening her and he might have a weapon. Obviously, he was doing none of those things. I actually needed him to stay and help me because I have a physical disability and needed help carrying things down the stairs. But he goes and waits on the porch so the cops wouldn't be alarmed when they got there. So the cops come, and she comes running out and tells them he's a psychopath who attacked her. He never touched her and she had no wounds. He explained the situation and told them he was only there to help me pack and he had no idea what she was talking about. The cops were very reasonable and could tell she was batshit, and they told my boyfriend he could help me pack. Then she starts telling them I have weed. I hadn't had any weed for a month by this point and had gotten rid of my pipe. They didn't care and didn't even bother searching my stuff because it was so obvious we were being civil and she was the crazy one. So we left and I moved in with my boyfriend, who's now a lawyer. I started college, we moved to Vegas with our 2 cats, and I volunteer at a cat shelter. So suck it, Ashley, you massive crazy bitch. No one likes you.
In 2015, I was looking for someone to sublet my room while I was away for work for 2 months. In my ad, I stated that it was possible, but not guaranteed, that it could be longer because one of my roommates was talking about moving the week I got back to go out of state for grad school. I met with one girl, let's call her Sally, at a coffee shop a block from my university campus. She seemed normal enough. I mentioned that cleanliness was a big thing if she wanted to move in more permanently, as it was an issue with the roommate who would be moving. She said she was moving because her current roommate was too messy, and it wasn't a problem. I also mentioned that I was getting a cat in September. My counselor had suggested I get one to aid with PTSD after some trauma, and I made it clear that I was getting one. I stated that under no circumstances was another animal to be brought into the home. There was a policy about one pet, and as I had lived there for months and had been planning since before my need to leave for work, I was going to be getting my cat. She spewed some story about how her mom was terminally ill with cancer and had a mostly feral cat that she fed and that slept inside during bad weather. She said if her mom died, she would have to take the cat, but it could not be around other animals, so I couldn't get mine so she could have her mom's. I flat out said no, and she said she would have her sister take it in the event that it happened. Fast forward a few months and she had moved in. Upon her moving in, our electricity bills skyrocketed. She tried to get me to pay utilities for the period in which I sublet my room to her, which I refused because I put in my ad that the subletter was to pay rent and utilities for the duration of their stay. She was unhappy but let it go. Our third roommate moved out less than 2 months after I got back, stating that Sally was too dirty to live with and that she couldn't afford to pay the electricity that was being run up by Sally's insistence that every light in every room be on, even in daylight hours. I kid you not. She could be in the living room and would have her bedroom light, the kitchen light, and the bathroom light on. If I turned off the kitchen and bathroom lights, she would get up and turn them back on and return to the living room. I mentioned that the third roommate left in part due to how dirty Sally was. Sally had told me she was moving because her roommate was too messy, as you may recall from above. However, she was a hoarder that never cleaned the kitchen. At any given time, there was a pile of Sally's dishes by or in the sink or in the living room, and on more than one occasion, I would go to use my crock pot only to find it filled with whatever moldy food Sally had made in it without asking me. She never did her share of chores, but always made sure to tell me if she felt I needed to do my chores better. It got to the point that I didn't cook at home because the kitchen was so dirty. Sally also had major anger issues. I would regularly be upstairs in my room and hear her lose her temper and start throwing things. The refrigerator has dents in it from her punching it repeatedly. She also refused to respect my cat. He has diet problems, and his breed gets bladder stones, so being on a strict diet is important. Against my wishes, she constantly fed him food, and then got mad at me when he started stealing food. She also would leave the door open and insist he wouldn't get out, and that if he did, it was fine. I finally told her that under no circumstances was she to touch, feed, or interact with my cat because she was so disrespectful. She cried and said she was older than me and would never hurt him. He got outside and was terrified while I was gone. I came home, and he was at the door shaking and crying, which is what led me to this decision. Shit hit the fan when her mom died, about a year after she moved in. She came to my room and presented me with an itemized list of all the bills I owed her for after I threatened to report her to management for bringing her mom's feral cat that attacked my cat and was peeing everywhere. What sucked for me is that in my job at the time, a lot of my income came from tips, and I was giving her cash instead of going to the bank and writing checks, so I mostly had very little evidence that I paid. She threatened to sue me for almost $2,000 if I didn't pay her by the end of the week. I was preparing to leave for a 2-week trip that a friend gifted me for graduation, and happened to have $1,500 in a savings account that I had planned to use to pay my remaining balance to my university. I didn't check her numbers, which was my mistake, and just transferred her the money. That night my girlfriend went over the numbers, as did a friend, and both found that she actually owed me almost $1,300 just based on the fact that in her spreadsheet she listed bills twice, and I actually had enough bank transactions, excluding the cash I had given her, that would prove alone that I had paid her in full and that I should not have transferred the funds. I cried, and Sally refused to return the money, telling me I could see her in court before she returned it. The next day I had to leave for my trip and decided to enjoy the trip and worry about Sally later. I came home and my front door was wide open and my cat was locked in my room. Sally had left a note the day before saying she moved out. No notice. Expected her security deposit to be returned to her, and would not be giving us the rent money we left her to pay rent with while we were gone. Our management wouldn't allow us to make separate payments, so we had to consolidate. Her room had cat urine and spray up the walls, screens were destroyed, and she left her crappy furniture. The kicker? She refused to return her key. We had to offer to pay management to change the locks, and for 3 months after, she was still on the lease because she refused to sign the documents to remove her name. We did not give her the deposit back, and we made it known to some housing forum moderators on Facebook for our area what happened, so she could be banned from trying to use those groups to find housing.